Jace's ship was on fire when it crashed through the purple clouds of planet Jera. He had no weapons, no food, and barely any water. His ship lay broken behind him as he stumbled through the dusty red grass. He was the only human for 1,000 light years or so, he thought. On the third day, while searching for shelter, he saw her, an alien girl, tall and glowing, with skin like silver blue stone and hair that floated like smoke. She stood near a tree full of glassy fruit, laughing. With her friends, Jace stepped closer, careful not to scare them. The others ran, but she didn't move. She stared at him with curious eyes. "You're not from here," she said in a teasing voice. "Obviously," Jace replied, holding up his hands to show he had no weapon. She tilted her head, her eyes scanning his face. "Are all humans this?" "Skinny?" she asked, grinning. Jace smiled. "Are all aliens this sarcastic?" Her name was Ilari. She was the daughter of a high noble family in the village nearby. She didn't seem afraid of him, just amused. She offered him fruit and clean water. He accepted, thankful beyond words. They sat beneath the tree and talked. Ilari laughed at his stories about Earth. She said Earth sounded boring. Jace said Jera was terrifying. They laughed together. Then she said something that changed everything. "It was supposed to be a joke. I'll be yours if you bring me the moonshade bloom," she said with a grin. Her friends behind her gasped and giggled. Even Jace laughed at first. "What's that?" he asked. "A flower that doesn't exist," she said. "It's just an old story. They say it glows like the moon, only blooms once every 100 years, and hides in the most dangerous part of Jera. And no one's ever found it?" Jace asked. "No one's even tried," Ilari replied. "It's just a legend." Jace looked into her eyes and said, "Then I'll find it." Her smile froze. Everyone went silent. "You're serious?" she said, blinking. He stood up, brushing red dust off his pants. "Where do I start?" he asked. Ilari didn't know what to say. No one had ever taken her joke seriously before, especially not a human who had almost died 2 days ago. She pointed toward the distant hills. "There's an old map in the ruins there," she said slowly, "but it's dangerous." Jace nodded. "Good." He left without another word. The alien girl stood under the tree, speechless. Her friends whispered behind her. Why would he do that? She had no answer. That night, Ilari sat by her window, staring at the stars. She told herself it was just a silly joke. The human would probably turn back in a day, maybe 2, but something about the way he looked at her. It felt different, like he wasn't chasing the flower. He was chasing something else. A promise, maybe, or a reason to live. She couldn't sleep. In her dreams, she saw Jace climbing dark cliffs and fighting strange beasts. She saw him falling, bleeding, crawling through thick black vines. And always, he kept going. For the flower, for her. In the morning, the village buzzed with gossip. The humans gone into the cursed lands. They said, "He's crazy," someone muttered. "He won't last a day," said another. But Ilari said nothing. She walked quietly to the edge of the village and looked toward the hills. The wind blew her hair around her face. She didn't smile this time. She didn't laugh. In her heart, a strange feeling began to grow. Not guilt, not fear, but hope she hadn't known she wanted. Not until now, and far away, in the wild lands of Jera. Jace was already facing his first test. The forest before him was alive. The leaves shimmered like metal, and the vines moved when he stepped close. He tightened his jacket and took one step forward, then another. He remembered her eyes, her laugh, and the challenge in her voice. "I'll be yours if you bring me the moonshade bloom." Jace smiled. "That's a promise," he whispered. The forest looked alive, but not in a normal way. The trees were too still, like they were waiting. Their long dark trunks stood like guards, and their leaves whispered even when there was no wind. Jace stepped between them, holding a small torch that flickered nervously in the heavy air. The path behind him had already disappeared, swallowed by red mist. There was no turning back. Every Step he took made a soft sound, like the ground was breathing. His boots sank slightly into the moss that covered everything. Strange lights floated above his head, small glowing orbs that blinked and watched. He didn't know if they were alive or just tricks of the forest, but he kept walking. Somewhere deep in the trees, a low growl echoed. Jace stopped, heart beating fast. The growl didn't come again. Instead, he heard something else, a quiet sobbing. He turned, shining his torch toward the sound. A figure sat beside a tree, small, thin, shaking, a child alone. Jace moved closer, slowly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The child didn't answer. Then as he stepped closer, it looked up. Its face was twisted, hollow, eyes black like glass. The mouth opened too wide, and it screamed not in fear, but in hunger. Jace jumped back as the thing leaped toward him. He rolled to the side, dodging sharp claws that tore through the air. It wasn't a child, not really. It was something made to look like one. To fool him, he ran, torch shaking in his hand, light flashing over twisted roots and glowing mushrooms. Branches grabbed at his arms like fingers, thorns scratching his skin, but he didn't stop. He ran until the creature's screams faded into the darkness. He found a small cave and crawled inside, breathing hard, heart racing. Inside, it was quiet, safe for now. He sat down and looked at his torch. It was dying. The flame flickered, then went out. Darkness covered him, but in the silence, he heard something new, a soft humming like a song. He followed the sound with slow steps, hands touching the cold stone wall. The humming grew louder, warmer, and then he saw it. A small creature glowing with soft white light floated in the center of the cave. It looked like a mix of fish and firefly, gentle and calm. It floated closer and brushed his cheek. Suddenly, he felt warm again, like the forest was no longer trying to kill him. The little creature spun in a slow circle and drifted deeper into the cave. It wanted him to follow. He had no reason to trust it, but something in its presence made him feel peace. So he followed. The path led to a strange wall covered in carvings, symbols of moons, stars, and flowers in the center. He saw a shape that looked just like the moonshade bloom. Below it, words glowed faintly. "They who seek with a pure heart shall be shown the way." Jace didn't understand the symbols fully, but he felt the meaning in his bones. He looked at the creature, and it blinked once. Then it touched the wall. A hidden door opened with a deep rumble. Cold air rushed past him, filled with the smell of earth and old secrets. He stepped through the door into a forest much darker than before. But this time, it didn't feel evil. It felt ancient, like something was watching him, judging him. Far away, Ilari stood at the edge of her village. She stared into the hills, heart full of something she couldn't name. She hadn't laughed since he left. She kept hearing his words in her mind. Where do I start? Why had she said that joke? Why did it matter now? She didn't know, but something inside her said he wasn't going to stop, and if he didn't stop, maybe she couldn't either. Back in the forest, Jace followed the glowing creature deeper into the ancient woods. The trees here were twisted into arches, like gates from a forgotten time. Soft blue flowers lined the path, blinking open when he walked by. His breath fogged in the air. Even though it wasn't cold, he felt like he had stepped into a dream or a memory. Something big moved ahead, slow and heavy. Jace froze, holding his breath. The glowing creature stopped and hovered beside him. The ground trembled. A shape stepped into view, tall, with bark-like skin and glowing green eyes. It was not a beast, it was a guardian, and it had seen him. Jace didn't run. He stood still, waiting. The guardian looked into his eyes for a long time, then stepped aside. The path was open. Jace walked forward, his heart steady. He was getting closer to the truth, to the flower, to her. The river was silent, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like it was waiting. Jace stood at the edge, staring at the black water. It didn't move, didn't ripple. Even though wind brushed through the trees, he had seen rivers before, but nothing like this. This one was wide, endless, and dark enough to swallow light. A single broken bridge stretched across, barely holding together, rotted wood, missing planks, strange carvings on the rails. It looked ancient and cursed, and still, he had to cross. Behind him, the forest had vanished into mist. Ahead, the path to the moonshade bloom continued, and this river was in the way. He stepped onto the bridge, slowly. The first board creaked, but held. The second groaned under his foot. Jace kept walking, not too fast, not too slow. Each step felt like a choice, a test. Then he heard the whisper. It wasn't in his ears. It was in his head, soft, familiar. A voice he hadn't heard in years. "Jace," it said. He froze. "Mom?" He whispered. He turned around, but no one was there. Just the endless fog. He took another step, and the voice returned. "You left me, Jace. I was alone." He shook his head. "No, you died when I was a child." Then another voice spoke. This one deeper, colder. "You failed your crew," it said. It sounded like his captain. "You crashed because you were weak." Jace dropped to one knee, holding his head. The voices grew louder, mixing, twisting. Lies and truths tangled together. He tried to scream, but his voice disappeared. The river below began to glow faintly. Shapes floated just under the surface. Faces, eyes wide, mouths open, arms reaching, like they were drowning forever. Jace stood up, shaking. "No," he whispered. "You're not real." But the whispers laughed. "You'll never find the flower," they hissed. "You'll never be good enough for her." He gritted his teeth and walked faster, ignoring the voices. The bridge groaned and cracked beneath him. Then one plank snapped. He slipped, one leg falling through. Cold water touched his skin like ice and fire at the same time. Screams came from the river, not his, the trapped souls, begging him to join them. With all his strength, he pulled himself back onto the bridge. Breathing hard, heart racing, he crawled the last few meters. The moment he stepped off the bridge, the voices stopped, silence returned, but something had changed. Jace felt like he had left part of himself behind, a fear, a memory, a weakness. He stood taller now, his eyes clear. On the other side of the river, the land was dry and cracked. Stone paths led to what looked like old ruins, half buried in sand. A statue of a woman holding a glowing flower stood near a broken arch. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sad, as if she had waited for someone who never came. Jace touched the base of the statue. Symbols lit up, and a deep sound echoed across the valley. The air grew heavy again. He turned around and saw a figure standing at the far edge of the river. It was Alari, or at least something wearing her face. Her silver blue skin, her floating hair, but her eyes were wrong, too dark too. Empty, and her voice, when she spoke, was flat. "Why are you doing this, Jace?" He stepped back, confused. "You're not her," he said. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Even if you find the flower," she said, "she won't want you. She was just joking, remember?" Jace stared at her, then clenched his fists. "I know it was a joke," he said, "but it mattered to me." The figure's face cracked like glass and faded into mist. He was alone again, but not empty. Every challenge made him stronger. Every lie made him hold tighter to the truth. He remembered her laugh, the way her eyes softened when he spoke. She may have joked, but he had never been more serious in his life. Behind him, the ground shifted, revealing a narrow staircase leading into the earth. He took a breath and began to descend. Below, where light couldn't reach, something old and powerful waited, and maybe, just maybe, the moonshade bloom was closer than ever before. Alari sat alone on the rooftop, watching the stars above her village. The others were celebrating something, a harvest festival or a birth. She didn't know. She didn't care. Their laughter echoed through the air, but it felt far away, like a sound from a dream she didn't belong in anymore. She kept thinking about him, the human Jace, the one who had crashed from the sky and walked straight into the cursed lands just because of a joke. Her joke, "I'll be yours if you bring me the moonshade bloom," she had said, laughing. It wasn't meant to be real. No one ever took her words seriously. No one ever tried, but Jace had, and now he was gone, into the dark lands, the broken paths, the river of voices, the forest of watchers, all for something that might not even exist. Ilari told herself it didn't matter, that he was just a stranger from a dead planet. But her chest felt tight every time she thought of his eyes, the way he looked at her, not like she was above him or strange or dangerous, but like she mattered, really mattered. She remembered how he had smiled when he said, "Where do I start?" Not because he wanted to impress her, but because the challenge made him feel alive. She closed her eyes and tried to forget, but every time she did, she saw him hurt, lost, bleeding. She saw him falling into shadows and no one reaching out. Soft knock came at her door. Her little sister peeked in. "Are you okay?" Ilari nodded, but her voice caught. "I think I made a mistake," she whispered. Her sister stepped closer. "Did you love him?" Ilari didn't answer. She didn't know the answer yet. Maybe it wasn't love. Maybe it was something deeper than that. Something older. She stood up and walked to the edge of the village. The night air was cold, but she didn't feel it. She stared into the hills where he had vanished. The same hills her people feared. A voice behind her said, "He won't come back." It was one of the elders, arms crossed, eyes tired. "No one ever comes back from the Bloom lands." Ilari turned to him, her voice quiet but strong. "Then I'll go to him." The elder shook his head. "You don't understand what's out there." "No," she replied. "You don't understand." "What's in here?" She pointed to her heart. He didn't argue. He simply stepped aside, letting her pass. She walked to the storage hut, grabbed her hoverbike, and left without another word. The wind rushed past her as she flew into the night. The village faded behind her, only stars above and red dust below. She followed the path Jace had taken, her eyes fixed forward, her hands steady. She didn't care if it was foolish. She just knew she had to find him, somewhere deep in the ruins. Jace sat on a stone floor, shivering. The path had led him into an underground hall full of glowing blue crystals. Each crystal showed images from his mind memories. Dreams, fears. He saw Earth burning, friends calling his name. A small child reaching for him and fading into smoke. He clenched his fists, trying not to cry. Then one crystal changed. It showed Ilari, not laughing or joking, just looking at him, soft eyes, quiet breath, a small smile he had never seen before. He reached out and touched the image. The crystal flickered and dimmed. Then a wall shifted open behind him. The room beyond was strange. Warm wind flowed through a tunnel made of gold roots and soft humming sounds. In the center of the room sat an old alien machine, rusted but alive. It lit up when he entered. "Name," it said in a deep voice. "Jace," he answered. "Purpose." He paused, then said, "To find the moonshade bloom." The machine buzzed, lights scanning him from head to toe. "Only one with true reason may pass," it said. "What is your reason?" Jace stood still, heart pounding. He could have said love. He could have said glory, but instead, he said something simpler. "She made me want to be more." The machine paused, then stepped aside. The path opened once more, and far above, riding through the wind and lightning, Ilari whispered to herself, "Please be alive." The sky above the twin mountains was not blue. It was gray and broken. Clouds hung low like old curtains, and lightning danced silently in the distance. Jace stood between the two great peaks. One burned with fire, and the other glowed with frost. Both were alive in their own way, and both blocked the path to the moonshade bloom. He had made it far, farther than any human, maybe farther than any creature before. But this place was different. This place felt like the final wall, the trial that asked not just for strength, but for soul. A stone tablet lay before him with a simple message burned into its surface. To reach the bloom, you must pass through heat that burns all lies, and cold that freezes all fears. He looked at the fire mountain, its rivers of lava hissing down cracked black rock. Then he turned to the frozen peak, where snowflakes hovered in the air without falling. Both paths were death. He sat down between them and closed his eyes. His body ached, his hands were bleeding. And his breath came in sharp gasps, but inside he felt calm. This wasn't just about a flower anymore. This was about the man he had become. From the fire mountain came a sound roaring, deep, hungry. A fire beast made of ash and stone crawled down toward him, eyes burning like suns. From the ice mountain came something else, a shadowy figure made of frost and silence, walking without sound. Both came at him from opposite sides. He did not run. He did not hide. He stood between them, and when they reached him, they stopped. The fire beast spoke, voice cracking like flames. "What burns within you, human?" Jace answered, "The will to prove that a single promise can change everything." The frost figure stepped closer and asked, "What do you fear?" He replied, "Losing who I am before I find out why I came here." They circled him slowly, measuring him. The heat of the fire made his skin blister. The cold of the frost made his bones shake. But he didn't fall. He stood in the middle of both, in pain, in strength, in silence. And then both beasts vanished like smoke. The tablet cracked open, revealing a third path hidden until now. It led through a narrow canyon, quiet, still, and glowing with pale light. Jace stepped into it without hesitation. Far behind him, Alari stood at the bottom of the same valley. She had followed his trail through storms, wind, and ancient dust. Her hoverbike had stopped working miles ago, but she had walked the rest. Her boots were torn, her lips dry, but her eyes burned with purpose. She had seen the two mountains too. And she had chosen the same third path, unseen, unknown, a way made for only those who refused to be broken by extremes. As Jace walked forward, he didn't know she was behind him, and Alari didn't know she was just a few steps away from him. Both moved through the canyon, hearts beating faster. The walls around them glowed softly, as if alive. Strange symbols floated in the air, pulsing in rhythm with their steps. At the center of the canyon stood a tree, not tall, not wide, but glowing with silver roots and a single bright bloom at the top. The moonshade bloom. Jace froze when he saw it. He had dreamed of it, chased it, bled for it, and now it was right. There, he stepped forward, hands shaking. But the moment he reached out, the ground shook. From beneath the tree, a creature rose, taller than any giant, made of roots and shadows. It had no face, only a glowing center, and it raised one long arm to block him. "You are not alone," the creature said, voice like thunder. Jace turned around, confused, and that's when he saw her. Alari stepped into the light, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She had expected many things, but not to see him alive, not to see him standing before the bloom, not to feel her heart crash against her ribs like this. They stared at each other. Speechless, the guardian looked between them and said, "One must choose the flower, but only one will be changed by it." Jace looked at Alari. She looked at him. No one moved. And then Jace did something she didn't expect. He stepped back. He lowered his hand and said, "Let her choose." The guardian paused. Alari blinked. "Why?" she asked, breathless. "Because I didn't come here for the flower," Jace said. "I came for what you made me feel." The tree glowed brighter, the air warmed, and petals began to fall from the bloom. And somewhere deep inside both of them, something began to grow. Not just hope, but something stronger. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The tree with the moonshade bloom stood between them, glowing softly in the quiet air. Its light touched their faces, but its warmth came from something deeper. Not heat, not magic, but choice. Alari took a slow step forward. The guardian made no move to stop her. Its tall form stood still, arms folded like a watchful parent. Jace didn't speak. He didn't even blink. He had already made his decision. She reached out, her hand hovering inches from the glowing petals. The flower pulsed with light calm. Steady, alive. She closed her fingers gently around the stem and plucked it from the tree. Nothing exploded, no storm came, no scream from the sky, just silence. And then, the bloom changed. Its light spread through her hand. crawling up her arm, across her chest, into her heart. Her body glowed from the inside, like it was remembering something old. Something buried. She gasped and dropped to her knees. Jace ran to her, holding her shoulders. "Ilari," he said, voice full of fear. "I'm okay," she whispered, eyes wide. But her voice sounded different, clearer, stronger, as if something inside her had woken up. Then she looked at him and said, "I remember." He frowned, confused. "Remember what?" She held up the flower, still glowing, still alive. "I've seen this before," she said. "Not in stories. Not in dreams. In my blood." Jace stared at her, stunned. Ilari closed her eyes, and suddenly, images filled her mind. Old cities buried beneath the sand, tall towers of crystal, people with glowing hands speaking in light. The moonshade bloom was not just a flower. It was a seed of knowledge, a key, a memory of what her people once were. "I was never meant to joke about it," she whispered. "It was calling to me." She stood slowly, eyes burning with silver light. The guardian nodded and stepped back, melting into the tree. Its job was done. Ilari turned to Jace and reached for his hand. "Thank you," she said. "For believing when I didn't." Jace smiled. "A little dizzy. I didn't know it would do all this." "Neither did I," she replied. They stood there together, under the ancient tree, the bloom between them, and for the first time, it felt like the planet itself was listening. The sky changed color, soft gold, melting into pink. Wind stirred gently through the canyon, carrying old songs that no one had heard in centuries. But peace never lasted long. Not for people like them, not on a planet like this. A deep vibration rolled through the ground. They looked at each other, then at the canyon walls. Cracks appeared, stone falling like dust. From above, a sound broke through the silence, a distant hum, cold and sharp. It was not natural, it was mechanical. Jace turned his eyes to the sky, and he saw them. Lights, ships, human ships. He knew those engines, he knew those colors. It was the Earth fleet, and they were descending fast. Ilari stepped back, her face changing. "That's your people," she said. Jace nodded slowly, but his chest felt tight. "They're not here to rescue me," he said. "They're here to take what they find." Ilari held the moonshade bloom tighter. "They'll want this," she said. "They'll want me. They'll try to control everything." Jace looked at her, and for a moment, his heart broke. He had chased a legend, found a truth, and now the worst part was just beginning. Not the search, not the pain, but the fight to protect what they found. Above them, the first ship landed with a loud crash. Dust flew everywhere, metal feet touched the ground, voices shouted orders, lights flashed in every direction. And in the middle of it all, a tall man in a black uniform stepped forward. He looked at Jace, then at Ilari, then at the flower glowing in her hand. He smiled without warmth. "Well done, Captain Jace," he said. "You've led us right to it." Jace didn't move. His hands clenched at his sides, and Ilari stood tall beside him, the flower's light growing brighter with every second. They didn't run. They didn't bow. They waited, because this time, they would not be the ones giving up anything. The Earth Fleet soldiers spread out fast. Their boots hit the ground with hard, sharp sounds. They moved like machines, weapons ready, eyes cold. None of them smiled. Ilari stood still, her fingers wrapped tightly around the moonshade bloom. It pulsed with light, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. Jace stood between her and the soldiers, his arms slightly raised, not to fight, but to show he wasn't afraid. The officer in black armor stepped forward. His voice was smooth, but it cut like ice. "You did well, Jace," he said. "We tracked your signal the whole way. We knew you'd lead us to something." "I didn't lead you to her," Jace replied, voice low. "I found her." The officer smirked. "Same thing," he said. "And now we'll take what she's holding." Ilari's glow brightened, and the wind around her shifted. The bloom began to hum, not loud but deep, the kind of sound that touches your bones. One of the soldiers stepped closer, his hand outstretched. But the moment his fingers came near, the flower flared with white. "Fire!" he screamed, falling back, clutching his arm. The others raised their weapons, but none fired. The officer held up his hand, watching her carefully. "This flower," he said. "What is it?" Alari looked at him, but her eyes were no longer soft. They were sharp, ancient, alive with memory. "It is not for you," she said. Jay stepped forward, standing beside her. "If you take it," he said, "you'll destroy everything this planet still remembers." The officer narrowed his eyes. "And what if we don't care?" The ground beneath them rumbled, slow at first, then stronger. Dust rose, rocks cracked, and the air itself seemed to shimmer. The bloom in Alari's hand lifted slightly, as if floating on its own. It glowed brighter. And then, it spoke not. In words, not in language, but in light. Visions flooded everyone's minds. Old cities shining like stars. People living in peace with nature and machines. A world full of balance. Then war, then silence. The bloom was not a weapon. It was a message, a memory, a chance. The soldiers froze. Even the officer looked shaken. Then the bloom faded to a soft glow again. The ground stilled. The air calmed. But no one moved. Alari turned to Jace, her voice soft. "It chose to speak through me," she said. "Because I listened." Jace nodded. "You earned it," he said, "and they didn't." The officer looked between them. Then at his confused team, he saw doubt in their faces, fear. A crack in the control he thought he had. With a tight voice, he said, "Take them." But the soldiers didn't move, not one. They looked at each other, then at Jace, then at Alari. They lowered their weapons, slowly, unsure. The officer's face twisted in anger. "Do it now," he barked, still. No one obeyed. Jace stepped closer to him. "She's not your prize," he said, "and neither is this world. If you want to conquer something, go home and conquer your own fears." The officer reached for his sidearm, but before he could aim, the bloom flashed once more. His weapon crumbled in his hand like dust. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stepped back, then ran. Silence fell again. But this time, it was peaceful. The soldiers slowly backed away, heading to their ships, one by one. The engines lit up and rose into the sky until the valley was quiet again. Alari lowered the bloom. Now calm and still, the tree behind them glowed faintly, like it was proud. Jace looked at her. "So," he said, "you still think it was just a joke?" She smiled, the kind of smile that only comes when something real is born. "No," she said. "I think it was a promise I didn't know I wanted to keep." He stepped closer, and she didn't move away. They stood under the tree, both changed, both whole. She took his hand gently. "Let's protect this place," she whispered. "Together," Jace nodded. "I didn't come all this way just to leave." Above them, the sky opened with light, warm, golden, free, and in the center of that glowing world, the moonshade bloom shined brighter than ever. It had been found, but more than that, it had been understood.